Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and staying. It's like a very full house. I'm excited to be here. I'm Ren Fisher. I'm with the Apptentive team. I'm really excited to be moderating the panel today. Our panel is Product Management Today, How PM Strategic Value is Rising in Organizations. With us today, and I apologize because we've had some changes in title, all upwards and all congratulatory. But we have Lauren Chan-Lee here in the middle. She's Director of Product at Care.com. We have Sandeep Prasad, who is now Head of Mobile at Spirit Airlines. And then Rick McNerny, and he is Manager of Mobile and Notifications at JetBlue Airways. So I think I would like to have you both, or all three of you, briefly introduce yourself by describing your PM role and responsibilities at your company and something that you're working on that you're excited about.
Sure. So I just recently started Spirit Airlines about 3 weeks ago. I'm the head of mobile, and I know, right? Some of the core responsibilities and strategies, at least that I'm focusing on right now, is just understanding the customer journey. So that's when you're making the booking on whether it's a web or app, when you're going to the airport, interacting with the kiosk, expediting the security and the boarding, and then as you go on in-flight, we're launching Wi-Fi across all the airlines by the end of the year. So understanding those different customer journey points and delivering customer value is really my main initiative this year, and we're going to be relaunching the app in November.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. I lead product for our mobile apps and trust and safety teams at Care.com. And at Care, PM is really a GM type of function. So I have a really broad scope across not just executing with product teams, but also doing everything that needs to get done and putting those things in motion cross-functionally, whether it's negotiating a contract or working with marketing on the right campaigns that we need to stimulate our business.
So previously, in my former life, I was the product manager for mobile products at JetBlue, and that was native applications as well as mobile web. Now that role has changed in my new management position. I'm going to be hiring a backfill, so send resumes my way. And also will now be managing product managers. And it's an interesting way to get to this position has been because of the success of it. So a lot of it has come from understanding enough of the technical information to be able to communicate with the development teams, as well as being able to talk to leadership and understand what their goals and keep that communication flowing to designers, other stakeholders, and really being the traffic cop of information so that the product stays unified even though it crosses very many touch points.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we've heard from many product managers at Apptentive, we've heard from many product managers rather, that the strategic value of PMs is rising in organizations because of how deeply you are connected to your customer voice. Marketing comes to you with questions, CEOs ask you for advice, sales and customer support are constantly picking your brain on how to connect with customers better. So my question is two parts. It's, have you experienced this individually? And if so, what are your predictions on whether this trend or how this trend will continue to evolve?
Well, I think like the true essence of product management in general, I'm sure a lot of you have heard this, it's the intersection of business, design, and technology, right? So it's your job to talk to all the different stakeholders in your organization, get their input, understand the data from your own product line, as well as be a representation of the customer and really deriving value for them. So to me, that's the core responsibility of a product manager, and that should be a daily thing for you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I definitely think that having that customer knowledge is an incredible advantage that you have within your organization. So as Ren mentioned, you have all these different functions coming to you for advice. And I find that in my own organization, I even have PMs that come to me because some of the other product teams are organized around a specific feature or functional area, whereas the products that I look after are across the platform. And so I have a lot of knowledge across the entire user journey. So I even have product managers come to me, and that's really great because it gives you a seat at the table in terms of influencing what that next set of features are or what the right strategies are. And so you can definitely find ways to use that to your advantage.
And does anyone have any thoughts on if there are disadvantages or challenges that have arisen because of your increased strategic value?
So one disadvantage I see this, being the focal point as a product manager, you're the one that knows most of the data around the company because you're talking to all the different stakeholders. So at the same time, your responsibility is for the product success. So to me, the disadvantage is because you're the one throat to choke in the organization, and all the execs are going to be asking you the questions on why something was a success or failure.
And I think similarly, from a different aspect, my products, I do not actually own anything beyond the experience. So at JetBlue, the way people are interacting with the product, I don't necessarily make the product that you are engaged with. So there's a conversion team that's dealing with booking, there's a check-in team, is the self-service team. All of these various products, I'm sort of building a collage of all of their work and having to create a unified experience that you interact with whenever you use the product. And so the big challenge there is, whereas in your setting, you are the point, the decision maker in owning that product. And in my scenario, I'm dealing with the upstream ramifications of what other teams have decided and try best to advise them so that the collage that I create is cohesive and meets all of the customer needs.
Excellent. So let's go to a topic that's really popular with PMs, and that's budget. So how can you, or are you leveraging your increasing strategic value to drive value and then drive budget allocation as well?
I'll take this one first. Of course, everybody always wants more resources, right? I mean, who in this room does not want more resources right now? So I really have two key points here. One is that you have to ask, right? I'm very pleased to see there's a ton of women in this room, and we all often get the advice that, we don't ask for things, and that's certainly true when it comes to resource allocation. I think a lot of times there's this fallacy that, okay, well, this is the team that I have, and this is what I'm stuck with, but that's not actually true. There's a lot of decision-making that's happening all the time around budgeting, around where to put people, so you have more influence over that than you think. So definitely ask. The second point is be specific and actionable with the request that you come with, right? So if I go into the exec or whoever that decision maker is and I just say, oh, I need more dev resources, then it's super easy for them to be like, oh, no, we don't have budget for that right now. Like, come back to me next year or something. But if I come in and say, these are the initiatives that I can do with the resources that I have today. And these are all the other things that I could do if I have 2 more devs. And that way it's very easy for them to see exactly what you're asking for as well as the return from it. And it is a much easier decision for them to prioritize.
Excellent.
And just to add on to that, to have a strategic way to increase your budget. So I've worked as a product manager mainly at big corporations. So executives, once they set their budget and you have a great idea, they're not going to increase your budget. So the way to get your idea across the organization actually to fruition is basically go across the organization, figure out how your idea fits in with the other stakeholders, whether it's an incentive for the loyalty teams, helping the marketing teams. And once you branch out and establish those relationships and you create more value for them, you can allocate their budgets to the idea. And that's really the strategic way you want to do it across a big organization.
It's like Inception.
There you go.
Excellent. All right. Do you have any thoughts on that, or should we move on to the next question?
I like money. And we can build things.
Yes, perfect. This is sold. All right, so product teams for mobile that work with us at Apptentive acquire so much customer feedback that they often find themselves pulled more and more into conversations with leadership in order to share their insights. And so what I would like to ask you, and I'll start with you, Rick, what kinds of developments and trends are you seeing in product ownership and escalating customer feedback to executives and across multiple departments?
So I think the creation of JetBlue was to create an airline that actually was providing a service rather than selling a product. That was sort of the model that the founders created, and we still strive to provide that service. So customer satisfaction beyond the soft skills that our crew members have and that you experience when you're flying our product service was very specifically driven around people skills, soft skills. And so we were very open. You can, Robin, our CEO, gets customer emails and responds to them within 24 hours. So it's very easy to reach out to our team. So the digital channel wasn't particularly new, but as we moved into applications, now what's changed with using the Apptentive product has been that now whenever they reach out, rather than sending an email to me that's very vague that says so-and-so from Boston to Fort Lauderdale couldn't check in. And I don't know what they were was it a kiosk? Was it the app? There's a lot of digital systems in airlines. And so the challenge there was before we had to do a lot of legwork to dig and find out what the actual problem was. And we didn't know if it was just anecdotal, if it was connective, where that problem lied, and spent a lot of resources and time trying to solve those problems for our leadership. Now that we have the ability to collate that data and have a much bigger picture because we talk to so many more of our customers, we have the ability to focus our leadership, and leadership is now asking the question in a new way of saying, is this a problem? Are we seeing this a lot, or is this one-off? Which is very powerful and saves a lot of time.
Excellent. Sandeep or Lauren?
Well, I was just going to say, at my former job at JCPenney running the app, we used Apptentive as well. And the Insight tool tended for us to save a lot of time, as Rick mentioned. Just being able to see the different features you launched and tagging it by release, we were able to diagnose issues that were really missed by us at the whole time, just because those bugs weren't followed in Jira and things with other tools. So just having the ability to see from an overall fashion quickly, it really helps you out on a day-to-day basis.
Great. This next question is for Lauren. It's within the same vein as the topic of customer feedback, but it can be difficult to get all the data you need to fully understand your customers. How do you address this?
Yeah, you always wish that you had the perfect data set, but oftentimes that's just not the case. I once read an article where Jeff Bezos was quoted about the different types of decisions that you need to make. And there's basically one group of decisions where it's such an important decision. Once you make that decision, you can really never go back from it. And so you have to be super careful when you make that decision. There's another group of decisions which are recoverable. It is something that, it's great if it goes well, but if it fails, it's not the end of the world. And I think that that is a really good way to think about how much data you need to make the decision as well. So if you have imperfect data and you are making one of those like group 2 decisions, then it's fine if you have 70% of the data, or you can work with whatever you have. And what's more important there is that you are trying something out, and then you are gathering the data from that and iterating on that experience. If you are making the first group decision where you cannot recover from it, I would not advise that you go forward and make that decision without the data that you feel is really critical. I would take the time then to instrument the data that you need to make sure that you're getting that decision right.
Excellent. So this is also another very popular topic with PMs, but how do you manage the executive expectations, customer expectations, and technical resources in your day-to-day responsibilities? I'm sure that all three of you have a response for this.
Yeah, I think just like to keep it short and sweet, I think being transparent and communicating across the organization, making sure all the different parties are aware of your strategy and roadmap and vision, allows you to set expectations from day one. I think most of the problems with product managers is you sell the dream in the beginning and then you don't follow up on a day-to-day basis with them. So when you get to the end of the project, the other parties aren't informed, and they were originally informed of your goals at the start of the project. So keeping them in the loop and communicating them and getting their inputs on a day-to-day basis is key to actually managing expectations.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is because of the success of, at JetBlue when I came in 2014, it was not a product-centric world. I sat on the marketing side of the house and threw ideas over to an IT team that executed. Now I'm on the other side and working directly with the developers and those resources. And I think that because of the successfulness of the pivot that JetBlue made, in being transparent, we have to also make sure that the leadership team, may look at a team that goes, wow, they're really turning out product. let's also have them do this and this and this, and they don't necessarily understand the downstream impacts of, well, yes, we could do that, but because of capacity issues and budget, we can't necessarily grow it. So I think sometimes pushing back is a good way to, beyond just being informative of where you are with the current product, but for new asks and the whims of leadership, sometimes you need to be able to push back on them so they understand what they're choosing between. I had a boss who liked to talk about ice cream, and he always said that whenever you go in to talk to leadership, they either want vanilla or chocolate, and you need to tell them which one it is. So if you can simplify things down to that pushback is a lot easier to swallow because it's ice cream.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
That was good.
All right, so this question, I think is, we've rapped about it earlier, that I'm pretty excited for us to talk about in front of you all. Can you name some changes that you made that you thought were minor, but ended up being a major differentiator? Or it could also be a simple thing that ended up having a massive impact. And this can be in your product, it can be in your process, management style, anything.
We rapped about it, but I will not be rapping my answer. Although I think we did have a fantastic intro. I really appreciated that transition for our panel. My example is just something very small. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the product areas that I own is trust and safety. And it's one of those areas where, if you ask anybody, they'll say it's super important to our company. But then it's not always top of mind, right? Like if you're the product manager that is focused on enrollment, let's say, you're really thinking about like user growth numbers, and you're not necessarily thinking about things that are necessary from a safety perspective. So the thing that I started doing was just sending a regular email update to a very broad audience. I spammed some deals. I just did it. I didn't ask for permission first. It includes three things. So the first is an update on what the squad is up to, what have we released lately, what's on our roadmap. The second is things in the news that are related to this topic area. So it could be everything from like Facebook's fake news stuff that's been happening, or development in facial recognition and how that impacts marketplaces and companies that use it for safety purposes. So pretty broad, and just kind of giving some competitive understanding to the whole audience that's reading it. And then the third thing is my deep thoughts. And that can just, be whatever I think the interesting or important topic is at that time. And what really surprised me about this is that, usually you get a lot of emails that people don't read. But I was so surprised that people actually would respond to my emails and, follow up with their thoughts. And I thought that was a really great way to engage with people and just kind of keep the topic in their mind somewhere, so that like Inception, that next time when they are working on a product feature, they do think of this area to consider.
That's a great point. Megan, our resident rapper, actually sends around a weekly email for the sales team, and she gets us all to open it by including 3 jokes of the week. So to put on that point that you tease the people to open the email, and they end up reading the content that you want them to take action on. It's great. Rick?
Sure. I think that the biggest surprise to me, I thought it was a small thing, was trusting your business partners, which I don't know why you would work with someone you don't trust, but I think that especially large organizations tend to put pressure on the smaller organizations that partner with them. And in my opinion, you shouldn't work with someone that you don't trust. And so my team is very broad. We have people in different states and have a vast group of, I shouldn't say vast, that makes the team sound bigger than they are. Vast distance between where people are geographically. But the part that was surprising to me was how much more successful we were because our relationship was built on trust. So when developers said how much capacity they had, I believed them. And that trust came back to me in quality of work and delivering on time. And the same thing with our engagement with, M Particles, one of our partners, as well as Apptentive. And both of those were relationships where there was a lot of trust and understanding exactly what the product was, what it was going to do, and how it could help us. And beyond that trust, then there became the business relationship. So it was built on trust first. A lot of times I think that gets lost. Because it's easy to just sort of push for a goal and micromanage a partner or be micromanaged by a partner and not know how to push back and say, no, this is my area of expertise. And so trust me, I am telling you the right thing. I'm not trying to puff up numbers for you or anything like that. And you end up with a better product and everybody wins in that scenario.
Very good. Sandeep?
Yeah, just to kind of go along with what Rick said, I think one of the main mottos I would say is trust the process. On a day-to-day basis of product managers, you're going to have a ton of meetings. And one thing I've always been a part of is the Agile workshop, the Agile methodology. And with that comes, daily stand-ups, grooming, writing user stories, and all those things of the nature. But a lot of times with all the different things that are rolling, all the different changes, eventually you'll want to skip one of those meetings, and eventually that will have a downstream impact on the development team, on the UX team. So if there's any motto of things to actually understand, it would be just trust the process and keep going with what there is. And even though there's going to be so many things that are going to try to distract you, stick with it and keep going for it.
All right. So this is kind of a fun question. What technology trend are you most excited about?
I'm excited mostly for AR and VR right now, because to me, as working for Spirit Airlines, I think it'd be really cool to immerse yourself and picture yourself entering the airline that you're about to fly in, seeing if that seat is the type of seat you want to be in, seeing how your bags fit and all that different nature. Just immersing yourself in the in-flight experience can be a real game changer in terms of what we can do for the product line going forward.
I like that too. But I'm also excited about voice as a user interface. I actually have both Alexa and Google Home in the kitchen. They just go head to head all day long. And really what I'm most excited about that technology is that I think that it's going to give people who don't have a way to interact with devices traditionally a way to interact with technology. I'm thinking about, people who are older or handicapped and they can't interact with, the ways that we have today. So I think it'll unlock technology for a lot more people.
And one of the things that JetBlue is big on, and I have mixed feelings about, is actually biometrics. So we're trying to get rid of the need for you to have that boarding pass, which limits the app that I've spent so much time building. But you'll use it for other things. But the biometrics is a really interesting place because much like Touch ID, you have a face, and in my college, I had 2 doppelgangers, so I'm pretty sure we could have all unlocked each other's phones. So it's an interesting...
Did they have your mustache?
The mustache came later. I did not have a mustache. Well, I did have a mustache in college, but not this much fun.
It has to be an identifiable characteristic.
Right. Needed to break myself out as the different white guy.
Yeah, from your doppelganger.
Yeah.
Got it. Oh, great. So what's one piece of advice you would like to give your peers in the product management industry?
I would say that you have to find a product that you really love and believe in to work on. So I'm sure we've all read tons of studies that tell you that intrinsic motivation is so much more motivating than extrinsic motivation. And I certainly find that to be true. One of the reasons why I joined Care.com is because the mission of the company is really something that I can connect with and find meaningful. I think you could probably already tell from some of my earlier comments that I really believe that women should be empowered to be in the workforce. And I think that's really core to Care's mission as well. On both sides of the marketplace, we have families who, having a service like Care enables working families to have their loved ones taken care of and for you to be productive in the workplace. And then on the caregiver side, it enables a lot of those women to be employed. So that's where, the purpose and the mission of the company really jive with the product that I spend every day working on.
I would say the one thing I would say is be data-driven, but don't let the data be the story. So a lot of times your biggest home run hits are going to come half from data and half from your gut. So there's always going to be times where you're going to come with an innovative solution, you're going to have an imperfect data set, and you're going to have to rely on your experience, your expertise, and the other parties where you're gathering information to make an informed decision, right? But at the end of the day, the greatest, most innovation changes that I've seen, even Jeff Bezos has it in his statement, is basically it's going to come from your gut and your experience, and you have to go for that kind of change if you want to see it. And that's going to be the most disruptive innovations that you could possibly see.
I think there's I don't know if you're familiar with Smashing Magazine, but they have a great article on why companies need product managers. And I have used that as my model of how I wanted to be and failed a lot in living up to all of the things that are in there. There's a description of feet mired in the mud and head in the clouds and being not stretched so thin that you are not effective in all of those areas. And for me, it's the actually what I enjoy most, and this is a bit morbid, is actually the failure. I like breaking things. I always have. I like taking things apart and understanding how they work. And I think that part of the role is really built around understanding that when you fail, what you learn is very exciting, because then you get to fail in a new way and find another way to pivot. And that constant evolution keeps you from getting bored and complacent. And the technology markets that all of us work in is constantly evolving. So my biggest fear in technology is becoming complacent and bored. And I don't think that's possible when you're in this role, because it changes so fast and you'll get to fail so much catastrophically that you always have some other challenge to overcome. And that's really exciting. And so it keeps the role fresh and exciting and new. And, one of my bosses said, he's like, the app is not going to hurt anybody. So he's like, so it's okay if it fails. You're going to make some people angry, but they're all just going to be angry, and people will get over that. So once I came to terms with that, it was a lot easier to push harder and be more experimental. And now that we're using tools where we can do that, either pre-launch or post, we now have the ability to sort of see those results and measure better and see where our gut has led us versus where the data has taken us. And often it's in between the two, but it's fun to find out which way you get there.
That's a great response. Thank you. So this could be in your current role. I know you're starting a new role. You've just started at Spirit Airlines, Sandeep. My question to all three of you is, what's one thing you do at work or have done and accomplished that you think has made or makes the biggest difference in terms of impact to the team or product? It's offensive to say one thing.
I wore a kilt to work. Oh. I don't know how innovative was, but that some judged that as a failure.
That had an impact, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have great knees.
Thanks, Rick.
I didn't expect that answer.
Trying to wake people back up.
Got me woke up.
Yeah. All right, Lauren, do you have a response after that?
Sometimes it's hard to be after Rick.
I know. I'm
sorry.
I'm having a hard time responding. Just kidding.
I would just echo some of the earlier thoughts around communications, transparency. It's really like, you can never communicate too much because you need to be setting expectations. And the more that you're proactive about doing that, the better the outcome ends up being.
And I would just say one thing, as a product manager, being the focal point, working with everyone, remember, you're the product manager. You're not the designer. You're not the engineer.
Yes.
You're not the marketer. So you need to respect everyone and know that they're specialties, that expertise in that field, and allow them and collaborate with them to make the best decision going forward.
Okay, great.
I'm sticking with my kilt answer.
That's fine. We'll leave it at that. I believe I wanted to leave some time to do QA. If anyone could bring up the app, I can read off of that. Just give us a moment, or if you have your phone, that'd be excellent. Speaking of, does everyone today, have you downloaded the app for today for the event? Can I see a raise of hands? Oh, wow. Okay, cool. All right, I think it's really well designed. I'm super proud of our team. Has everyone given feedback today?
Oh,
thank you.
Yours refreshed, mine didn't.
Thank you. Everyone's given feedback or had the opportunity to do so or knew how to do it? Little heart icon in the top right? Okay, great. So let's see here. First question is, any recommendations on how to manage other groups in the org that try to drive, that's good. Any recommendations on how to manage other groups in the org that try to drive the product vision, strategy, or roadmap? In other words, try to take away from the product ownership that you're trying to manage.
I think a lot of times it's just that they don't really understand what's going on or like see what you're doing. So I think it's, again, I know a broken record here. It's communication about like what you have been doing or working on to move the roadmap along, right? So their perception is there's some kind of void in terms of, customer understanding or in terms of that translating into roadmap. So your job then is to let them know that, yes, I heard that. I know about it. It's in the backlog. This is when it's coming, or this is why it's not coming. And just letting them know that this is what's happening. And I think that those partners can be extremely valuable. I work every day with some of my cross-functional partners. For example, like I work very closely with the legal team on some stuff. And you wouldn't think that that would be a traditional partner for product. But what I found was that this person in particular is like very passionate about the product area, has a lot of ideas, and it's great. Like you figure out what the right way is to use that relationship so that it's helpful for both sides. Like I think she's a great thought partner, and she's a great person to just like bounce ideas off of, and that makes her also feel like she's contributing.
Excellent answer.
I guess I was going to say that at the end of the day, to me, it's just competing ideas for the same purpose. So being able to articulate the business value of each idea and seeing how it correlates to the executive strategy and executive KPIs makes it more data-driven. So being able to have that conversation with the other stakeholder that wants to adjust your roadmap and vision is really just coming down to analyzing the business value and impact of the two ideas. So if you're able to do that, you're going to be able to come with a better decision going forward.
Great. All right. This is a great one. Do you believe PMs with a technical background are more effective than those without, and why?
Go ahead.
I'm excited about this
Okay.
one. I have a degree in jazz guitar performance, so no.
That's technical. That is technical.
I think that pretty much all of it you learn while you do it. And it's really, good designers don't have to go to design school. Good technical people don't have to have a degree in technology. What we're mostly focusing on is being empathetic to leaders or to customers, designers, and understanding where they're coming from and being able to synthesize that. So it's more, I think it's relies heavier on soft skills than it does necessarily on technical know-how. The technical know-how you'll learn from the technical people, and asking those questions, being the person in the room that asks the question that you're like, I have no idea what this means. Can someone please tell me? And not being afraid to not know. I think that's the most important part of being a good product manager is being the voice to assimilate all of those disparate pieces.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to give you an analogy, it would be like going to another country and speaking their language. Even though you may not know their language fluently, they at least respect the fact that you're at least attempting and trying to learn what they're doing. So I think that's the way I would look at it.
I feel like this question always comes up, and I love it too for the same reason, because, I really think that as long as you're curious, you're able to speak the language and you show an interest in it, then that's what's really important. And I think that you can show your technical teams your value, your unique value prop, in that you understand the customer, you understand the business, and so you bring a different thing to the table that they don't have.
That's wonderful. How do you create an it's okay to fail culture at your org? Or have in the past?
So I've just brought a new team member on because as my roles changed, I now have people reporting to me, whereas before I was just part of the team. So there were some pivots where people who had worked with me as colleagues now report to me, which is interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. But I think what they've found is that even before they reported to me, I was happy to be the one to take the blame and let them take the credit. And I think that in a PM role, that being comfortable with taking blame and pushing other people forward for credit, your leadership will recognize that you are the one enabling them to get to the point of recognition. I've never, and I mean, we have done lots wrong. And leadership was able to go I was never crucified for the mistakes that I've made. And I always pushed back saying, well, we wouldn't have gotten to point B if we didn't fail at point A. And when leadership can see that and see the results and see that you pivot quickly and that your team is behind it and that everybody takes a lot of ownership of that product because you were so focused on learning and failing. It's not just a failure and then everybody quits and goes home. It's a failure, what did we learn? And that cyclical behavior, I think, is very encouraging, especially as a lot of young people coming into the workforce have been in environments where it's about memorization and regurgitation. It's not necessarily the mindset of creative problem solving. And so the first time they're on your team, I had an intern that the first time she failed was working on a product that we had, and it just crashed and burned. And I said to her, my response was, "That's awesome. I didn't think that would break." And and so when it did, she realized, we're just going to move on and we're going to try it again. And I said, yeah, can you figure out where it broke and can we fix it? And so I think being a little lighthearted about it and really driving home that you are the point of support for these other teams so that they can stretch too is what makes successful products and product managers.
That's a wonderful response. Do either of you have something you'd like to say? Or I have a question that was upvoted all the way up to the top.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think so, because we have a few minutes left. What strategies have you found effective for saying no to, or otherwise pushing back on requests from executives? Yeah, I see why I was upvoted. So what strategies have you found effective for saying no to, or otherwise pushing back on requests from executives or stakeholders?
Well, this actually just came up the other day. The CTO was like, "Oh, Lauren, we should do X, Y, Z." And I'm like, okay, let me look into this. So I did some research and I came back and I followed up and I said, okay, look, this is what I did. I did X, Y, Z. I vetted it out. And actually what we came to realize is that this pivot is a better idea because of, these reasons. And, it went over totally fine. It wasn't that he was so married to that particular idea. He was trying to drive a goal, and I found another way that I thought would drive it better, and he was very open to that. So I think that, when you say no, you need to come with reasons why, and then if you have an alternative, I think that really helps drive that conversation forward.
Yeah, I was just going to say basically what she kind of articulated. Being data-driven and being able to justify your idea is really going to be the way to analyze an executive request. You're going to always have to go see the executive request, take a look at it, investigate it, research, and present the findings to him. But providing the data set to justify your reasoning is all he's going to really want.
And my VP has always said, say no, but don't be negative. I think sometimes if you just are very blunt as an instrument, pushing back, and you're like, nope, never mind, next question, that you get a lot more pushback, as opposed to saying, well, why do you want to do that? Or trying to understand where the question is coming from. It's that empathy piece, to understand why are they asking you to do this thing, especially if maybe you don't even have to do the research. You know it's a bad idea because you already did the research before. And if you just quickly go, oh, we already looked into that, it's a bad idea, that's not going to be a no that goes over well. Whereas if you say, well, why do you want to do that? Help me understand where you're going with this and what is your end goal. Then that pivot becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, circling it back to those soft skills.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Well, I want to thank my 3 panelists today. So Sandeep, Lauren, and Rick. So if you want to see them, talk to them later. Thank you. Great questions.
That right on time.
Thank you.